to resume it, but I am going to resume it now for the fact that it's easier to take meeting minutes later.
Perfect.
All right. Move us into our treasurer's report, the first one of our calendar year, because we always operate on a month behind. Our opening balance back on January the 1st was $48,555. Like I said, at the end of last year, extremely healthy balance for us coming into the end of a year and the beginning of a next year. Just really pleased with that. I think it's been a pleasant surprise for us. We did not have many deposits come in the month of January. So we only had one CO7 CDOT payment come in for kind of part of September, October, and November for Tammy's time, $810 there. That's part of her time is spent on the CO7 communications contract with CDOT, and Mueller is the kind of contractor there that we work with on that project, and Tammy's time gets covered for the hours that she works on that project. That will slowly ramp up, and it will also change month to month. You'll see that reflected in the budget kind of as we go along. So that's just a new revenue stream for us, is now she's formally on that process. And we're just now starting to see that reflected in the treasurer's reports. I had to do a transfer from savings back in January because of an e-bike cash flow issue. We had to pay for the phase 2 e-bikes, which was about $10,000. I took that out of savings, paid for that, and then RTD has since paid us back for that. And I've transferred it back into savings. You'll see that in a future month's treasurer's report there, but that's where the $10,000 is that was cash flowed in. Our debits were pretty normal, right around that $30,000 number, although a little bit higher than normal because of that transfer to the savings. I reflected on both sides there. A couple things to point out here. Insurance was pretty high for the month of January. This is some annual stuff that comes in for us for workers' comp and some other things that we have to cover through State Farm. I worked with them to actually bring down our premium a little bit more this year, just based on the number of employees that we have over last year. The quote's just slightly different. The web support was a little bit higher than normal. It's usually pretty darn low, if not nothing, month to month nowadays. It was $400. That's an annual hosting fee for us. Pretty low, honestly, in the grand scheme of web hosting. So there's that. Mileage and phone reimbursement. We were both on that quarterly cycle. So one of our employees is on quarterly, one is on monthly. Sometimes it's higher, sometimes it's lower. This was one of those quarterly months. NADA meeting expenses, that was coffee. Tammy has worked really hard with Adams County to find a cheaper coffee solution. So we're happy to find that. For NADA, we're going to try it out tomorrow if we have it in person. I know it's not much, but that $50 every month for us actually does make a difference. For some reason, that cash flow causes an issue. So we'll get that brought down in future months. You'll see that there. I had to order more checks. That's a little bit different than normal. Had to register as a nonprofit, transfer to savings $10,000, and then e-bike program costs $475.14. These are some of the kind of incentive costs that we had baked into the grant with in partnership with CEO, the Colorado Energy Office. This is the very final invoice that we'll send to Colorado Energy Office for the e-bike side of the grant. Now we're fully on to RTD's funding of the e-bike grant, and you'll start seeing that come in future months. Jean was able to work with CEO to get, we had $475.13 left in there, and she charged them over by 1 cent, which is great. And we were able to use every penny plus one, which I don't think will break the bank. So really proud of that effort and glad to get everything out of the CEO program going directly to e-bikers to get them out there in a comfortable way and with some incentives to keep them doing that and keep tracking those trips. That's really what we're looking for. Our ending balance back on January 31st was $29,452. Our current checking balance as of this morning is $17,915. You'll see why here in a minute. Our current savings balance is $106,587. That's pretty high. I'm really building that up slowly as I can from a cash flow perspective, because eventually we're going to get asked from RTD to start paying back the local match on our 144th Flex Ride and e-bike grants. So all of the money essentially in that savings account, think about it as a local match account. And we have to get that up to roughly 175 by the end of September. We're on track to do that. All the invoices are in. It's penciling out just fine. We're in the black. It just takes some time to get that money in from all the various partners. So This is why our checking account is a little bit lower. I have a ton of invoices out right now, $131,000, almost $132,000 in invoices out. This is pretty typical for January, I think. Those of you that have been on the board for a few years know that in January and February, Karen sends out a lot of invoices and I've done the same. And as they trickle in, this number kind of pulls down slowly. So a couple of administrative things. CO7 communications project, that's Tammy's time. Again, the same thing is up here at the top, but just for January, $652 is still hanging out there. 144th FlexRide local match, that's a portion of that 34,000 roughly that will add into the savings account here that will contribute to our local match payment as a part of that grant. CEO e-bike final invoice, we have not quite gotten that money back in yet. CMAQ, couple of CMAQ invoices from CDOT have been a little bit slow lately. They have a new person on, and whenever they have a new person, it just takes a few months. It's just the way it goes. Membership, I've sent out $31,000 worth of invoices to membership. They've been slowly trickling in. Thanks to those of you who have talked to me about that, or I've been able to invoice, have re-upped for the next year. I appreciate your support. And I've been offering to meet with anybody and everybody that wants to meet with me. So those of you that are on the call that have not done that, if you'd like to talk about Smart Commute membership in 2023, please feel free to take advantage of that. There are a few people on this call that kind of joined mid-cycle, and I won't invoice you until mid-cycle. I'm trying to align everyone to basically 2 invoicing periods per year. So one at the beginning of the year, one in the middle of the year. We typically had a rolling invoice cycle. It's just too much admin for us, and I don't think it's worth quite the hassle. So I'm going to try to roll to just a January and June kind of invoicing cycle for us, for those that have joined midway through the year. NADA admin and membership, as you know, that's almost $30,000 worth of money that's come down from last year, but that invoice is out to all the jurisdictions that are part of NADA that'll come into us. And then our Adams County CMAQ local match is a big piece, $20,787. That comes into us to match our CMAQ grant directly. I know that's a lot of line items, especially on the invoices side. I'll look for questions or a motion if we're ready to move on.
Any questions, comments, concerns? I'm not seeing any. And no hands. I will go ahead and take a motion to accept the February treasurer's report.
Yeah, so moved.
And a second.
Second.
So moved by Kyle, second by Waddy. Any issues or concerns? Raise your hand, shake your head, wave your arms. I don't see any, so we'll go ahead and accept the February treasurer's report. Thanks, Carson.
Yep.
All right, so we've already discussed the bill, so we'll move on to the North Broomfield FlexRide update.
Yeah, a couple of things here. I think we might be able to roll through them relatively quickly. Thanks for hanging with me on the TDS treasurer's report there. The next thing on the list is the North Broomfield FlexRide update. So this is a pretty quick moving process that has happened between the last board meeting and this board meeting. The Broomfield FlexRide, the normal Broomfield FlexRide that runs kind of in the central Broomfield area, received TIP funding at the same time that we did for our 144th FlexRide to increase service and increase hours for their FlexRide. The difference is the admin piece for us. We were able to hire someone, Gene, to work with the admin piece. Broomfield did not do that, and RTD has essentially left a lot of money on the table. They have not delivered the service throughout the grant process. We've been meeting with Broomfield staff, Gene and I have, to identify ways to kind of expend the rest of that money by the end of the grant cycle, and then even ask for a push forward on the grant cycle. So that's the background. That's how we got here. The idea is, let's push the Broomfield FlexRide up north where the population is growing, right along State Highway 7, near all the hospitals, the King Supers, and let's overlap it with our 144th FlexRide in order to provide double service to that area as well. Sorry, let me let Pedro back in here. He's back at his office. We're in the middle of public hearing for this process for the May service change. So RTD has service changes every year. We're in the May one right now. The public hearings happened yesterday and today. The quote here at the top is kind of the generic description from RTD. They're saying that it's going to be kind of a normal flex ride between 9 and 4 p.m. to provide alternatives for those impacted by them pulling away the Route 128, which was a good east-west connector in Broomfield that has gone by the wayside during the SOP process and has not come back from COVID. So that's how they're couching the issue. I think we don't feel quite the same way from an operational perspective, but RTD is taking a little bit of cover underneath that Route 128, we think. So like I said, existing Broomfield Flex Ride TIP grant funding is going to fund this process if it goes through. We've been able to go through the Title VI analysis with RTD staff, and Gene and I on our team have been able to pull a lot of active data collection in terms of what we're looking at from a disproportionately impacted community standpoint. So Northern Broomfield has quite a few lower income folks and a lot of older adults that need access to healthcare. So those are two pretty strong disproportionately impacted communities that reside in that area, a little bit different than other parts of our service area. So we're able to pull some of that data for Broomfield to provide to RTD kind of as backup. And then on the bottom here, this is something I pulled from a sheet that Broomfield and we shared with RTD that I thought was interesting. Based on the number of anticipated building permits, the population of the North Broomfield Flex Ride area is expected to grow by 40% by 2024, up to 14,000 residents. This is massive and a pretty strong show cause, we think, for RTD, right? And employment will obviously follow along those lines too. I'm going to show you two things here. One is a chart, one is a map. The first is this chart that our team put together to provide to Broomfield in order to submit formally to RTD. So this is value that I think we're adding to Broomfield here. So there are over 10,000 workers along the I-25 corridor between 144th and CO7, kind of on that, mostly on that west side, some on the east side in Larkridge, of course, and then even more on the east side as we continue to grow. And then we were able to pull kind of some of the normal statistics that we have for Amazon at 144th, and then Stephanie, your colleagues there at St. Anthony North Health Campus, and then Amazon at the 160th and Huron location as well. We don't service that location right now, but they do have 285 workers that are there. And then we were able to pull the origin information from these workers and provide it to them. It's pretty shocking where they're coming from. There's some pretty normal people in here, right? I think you would expect Thornton and Broomfield, but 16% coming from Denver to North Broomfield to work, to me is a pretty strong indicator of a reverse commute and something that we're seeing a trend here with, right? As lower income people look for those jobs that are stable, and as people like Amazon continue to move further out, this is what's happening. And even places like Brighton is not exactly close and is a pretty good indication of why people need improvements on CO7 as well. So I think I just wanted to show you this in order to say that our team is working pretty hard with the city and county of Broomfield to provide this value and show some real data to them as we try to push for a new service. This is what the service would look like from a mapping perspective. So just to orient you, I-25 is kind of right here in the middle of all these little dots. You can see St. Anthony North and the Denver outlets and Walmart down here. And that's 144th that runs east-west here. And then there's Northwest Parkway and then E470. So we've pointed out a few hospitals, and then there's obviously quite a few things up along CO7, King Soopers, Children's Hospital, and then Larkridge Shopping Center are some of the main ones. And then obviously Baseline as well, right, as it comes even more and more online. This is the proposed service area, and it would overlap with our service area down here in the 144th Flex Ride area. This is pretty interesting, but I think it shows kind of the vastness of what we're looking at. I think RTD is a little bit hesitant around kind of run times here, right? It takes a long time to get a flex ride from up here in the northeast corner down here to the southwest, but assuming they have the staffing and Broomfield definitely has the money, then we can pull something like this off. So that's really all I have. I just wanted to bring it to your attention. We're very actively engaged in this process, and Gene and I have been working to put together a plan for Broomfield to make sure that something happens, and it sounds like it might. And this could be a solid iteration for moving transit service further north than it's ever been. Questions or thoughts?
So is that northern boundary the Erie Parkway exit? Is that what that is?
Essentially, yeah. Essentially, yeah. And I mean, we're constrained on the northern end by RTD service area, right? I mean, we're not
Right.
pushing over into Erie here, but it is kind of that Erie Parkway exit, and we can't exactly go northwest because you run into RTD boundary problems. Yep.
And just so kind of is my understanding, the 128 used to cut across west to east on 128th, right? It was sort of
Correct.
a west to east sort of arterial that took folks back and forth. I know that it went through a lot of sort of lower density residential neighborhoods, went through my neighborhood, never used it. So is the concept then, since that 128 is no longer in use from the SOP, reallocating some type of funding and routes that would cover this type of service area? Do I have that correct? We don't have the route necessarily of the flex ride for this area just yet. That's still in development.
Yeah, I think the route is it's going to be a true flex ride. So call and ride service only, not fixed route service or even hybrid like R1 at 144th until we're able to show origin destination data that's strong enough as something like Wagon Road to Amazon to show that we need that exact fixed route. I think from the 128 perspective, there's Director Whitmore. From the 128 perspective, I think RTD is just saying we had this great east-west connector that was a solid backbone on the north end of our service boundary. And this could alleviate some of that if you wanted to head from, over here on the east, over here on the west. That's where I have some hesitations around how they're defining that. But I mean, they're staff or service planners and I'm not, so.
Yeah.
And Carson, what about, you should factor in, because that property south of the Lafayette, the corporate campus, Medtronics is getting ready to open with 3,500 people.
Yep. Yeah, I think so I guess I should say this now that you say that. We have a 7-page document that City and County of Broomfield and us put together and sent to RTD staff. And that kind of detail was definitely included. I just didn't pull it all out in front of you here today. We have a lot more detailed information, especially around kind of disproportionately impacted communities, because that's something that RTD and the Title VI process is super duper focused on.
Yeah. Well, it's incredibly interesting just with the growth that's going on up here, right? And sort of the awareness of the options and connections. I've been on the bus a few times with folks who live by the Lark Ridge Shopping Center who are driving to the park and ride on 120th. But then just the massive growth that's happening right now north of 470. It's just, yeah, it's really interesting. And I think more interestingly so is this dynamic of a reverse commute, where folks are from Denver are coming up north for all the jobs and commercial and up here. That is incredibly fascinating. That is entirely opposite than before 2020. So that's, yeah, it's a lot of information at once. I personally am happy that we're getting involved and sort of looking at what this may be, and at least sort of a light touch exploration of what a true flex ride would be. Definitely more information though would be helpful next meeting, see how it keeps progressing. This is a really interesting dynamic.
Yeah, we'll find out soon from RTD the kind of thumbs up or thumbs down from the service planning perspective. I think for all of your information, this is a first run for us at something like this, right? And it's probably not going to be perfect. Something that stands out to me and might stand out to some of you is there's no connection to the Wagon Road Park and Ride here included in this service area, and there's no connection over to East Lake Station on the north end of the inline, but that makes the service area ginormous. Both of those things create a serious travel time issue from a flex ride perspective. So I think this is just an opportunity to continue to blanket the area and potential kind of more micro transit service. So I would keep it there as this is a first start.
Yeah.
Carson, question. This may already be understood by most people on the call, but when we have the service area defined, is the idea behind the flex ride that it is people living within the service area can call up the flex ride and be delivered to another location within the service area, but they don't go over the boundary lines?
Yeah, correct. You don't have to live in the service area, but if you were just in the service area physically, if you were just standing there, you don't have to live at a home, but you could call it at any time and or schedule it to take you from, Holy Family High School over to the Lafayette corporate campus, right? You could schedule that ahead of time or just call to use it it's like an Uber, essentially.
If I was at Children's Hospital, could I
Mhm.
use it to go down to Denver?
Well, you would have to transfer
Okay.
probably twice under this model. So you would have to transfer from Children's Hospital down to our Flex Ride 144th at one of these stops, and then head down to Wagon Road, and then transfer to the 120X and come down. That's what I mean about the missing connections to the larger hubs. But again, I think that might be solved one day by the obvious idea that CO7 is pretty heavily underway and bus service is coming there relatively soon in some way, shape, or form. So we're trying to get a little bit out ahead of our skis on that front. Yeah.
And
Follow
Troy
up?
is on now. I don't know if Troy wants to weigh in on any of this or if he just wants to avoid it altogether.
Yeah, I don't want to put Troy on the spot. I brought him into this conversation. It's been happening in the staff level, so I definitely don't want to put you on the spot.
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
go ahead.
may regret that I jumped on this meeting after the BAP meeting, but yeah, I'm aware of the situation, interestingly enough, it's two other districts. It's not my district. So I'm not quite as intimately involved as Eric and perhaps Vince, but I've got a lot of constituents that have that issue, Jessica, as you might imagine, in Thornton, as you move a little bit further to the east and to the south. And I think it's a work in progress. The work done by Smart Commute is very helpful. And it gives, the three of us, Eric and Vince and I, a little more backstop and the ability to keep lobbying, to keep tweaking here. So yeah, that's a big gap, as Nathan had said, when you look at getting up into gosh, it's Weld County, I assume, Kyle, up there on the one side of I-25, but it's needed and makes some sense. But yeah, two transfers, people just aren't going to use it when it takes two transfers and 2 hours to go, what they could drive in 45 minutes in their car, and that kind of defeats the purpose of some of our programs. So yeah, we will stay on top of that. And Jesse Carter's a very reasonable guy to work with. Many of us have over the years with planning. So we'll just keep the heat, at least at simmer.
Thanks, Troy.
Well, for what it's worth.
What about inline connection? Is there any movement on that? I know that's been a conversation for, it seems like, many years.
Yeah, so I think that is that's an optional linkage that certainly needs to be part of the plan, not just buses the whole way, but getting to that facility there. So yeah, that's part of the deal as well. I mean, I know we have a little bit of issue from Brighton headed west to go over there as well. So yeah, it's part of the overall option for, some type of solution, at least, hopefully we can go to an interim, I think, as Carson had kind of mentioned, and then look at another run board change, within the next 3 or 4. Good point.
Yeah, if there's any messaging that you have that you think we should be using out there and advocating for it, just share whenever you come up with those, if you think of them.
Yeah, I will hopefully have a moment or two to touch base with Eric from Broomfield in that regard, because he's a wonderful spokesperson for that area and very well respected. So I'll visit with him and see what we can do to maybe have a joint message from the three of us, backed up by you guys, and certainly probably some pushing from NADA as well.
Any other comments or questions on this? This is really, I think, a great start, Carson. And just FYI, there's over 300 new employees coming to that manufacturing area that we have. So Meaty, once they get going, we'll have over 200 employees. And then Sashco, which moved from Brighton over to Thornton, they have over 100 employees. And I already mentioned to them, you know, Smart Commute. So I think that will be another introduction for you to meet with them and get them looped in.
Thank you. It'd be great to have introductions like that and be able to say, yes, you have an option that isn't just driving. So I know it's not the perfect option, but it's something. I guess while Troy's on the call, I was going to say this tomorrow at NADA too, but I guess just a big thanks to RTD for starting with, yes, we're going to work with you and figure out a way to maybe do this, and not just, no, this is not a good idea and we don't have the driver. So that is a big change from the staff side, and I thank you for that. I don't know if it's the board pressure or what it is, but it's been a big change.
Well, we like to think so, Carson. Maybe not, but we were known when the three of us were elected up north, four of us, if you or even count Lynn up in Boulder. The agency of no, you know, and a lot of conversations began with no, probably not. Now, what is it you want? No. And, you know, I'm sorry. Jack Etheridge said many years ago when I was on Thornton City Council, you know, that dog don't hunt. That's just not acceptable. So glad to hear that. We've been preaching that, and we'll again on March 25th, we have a all-day retreat with the board. So that is woven through our strategic plan with Deborah Johnson and even our CFO and our new police chief. You know, those three are outstanding individuals that understand that we're there to serve, not to say no. Oh gosh, you got me fired up. All right, I go back to mute.
My condolences to your police chief on his son. That was pretty hard to see and hear.
Extremely tragic, and I just feel so horrible for him. I don't know if any of you have met Chief Fitzgerald, but unbelievable breath of fresh air, a huge service mentality, and you know, he's lived in a transit environment many years of his life, grew up in it. I just think the world of him, and he's helped a constituent of mine in a way that would not have happened, Carson. Nothing against the old chief, was a wonderful man and I enjoyed working with him, but this guy has just ratcheted things up, and then to have that, you know, happen to his family is just devastating.
Yeah. All right. Well, on that depressing note, we'll move on.
Hey, real quickly, Jessica, just had one question. I don't want to oversell this Flex Ride when I'm talking with folks. So it sounds as though it is still being considered sort of in the feasibility phase. Is that correct? Do we know when there is a target to make a determination one way or the other?
Yes, it is in the consideration phase, and I assume it will happen at that May meeting that Troy is referencing, kind of a board meeting when they make a decision about what the service kind of plan that comes to them from staff is. I'll double confirm that, make sure I understand the timeline, and then I can tell you, but yeah, it's still under consideration. I definitely I would hesitate to oversell it at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. All right. Thanks for the conversation there. Yeah, this is the last thing. I know we have a couple of minutes left. I might have to push the membership recruitment update, or I just go quickly here. Well, I didn't put a slide in for new hire update. I just want to let you guys know, thanks for those of you who have kind of shared on LinkedIn or shared with your networks. We're still looking for a new hire. Just to refresh you, the start time would be kind of right around April 1st. The way Karen and I wrote the scope when she left for our CMAQ grant is we had the opportunity to hire someone right around the $50,000 a year range, so entry-level range-ish, starting in April. and be paid for 100% by our CMAC grant, which is all employer outreach based. It's all going to be that 1026 outreach and kind of our survey outreach on the back end of what Catherine does for us. And we'll be replacing a lot of Catherine's role kind of on the lower level as she helps guide them when she steps back from in terms of maternity leave. So she'll be away for a little while here, starting pretty soon, probably within a month, I would say, with her 5th child. So I know she's going to come on camera. There she is. And then we'll be kind of replacing part of her role with the new person. Obviously can't replace all of it, but we'll be kind of giving them that CMAC employer outreach opportunity and community outreach. So I have a few interviews lined up, one today and then a couple in a couple of weeks. I've gotten 3 decent applications. They've all ticked the boxes, but want to make sure that they would work well with a smaller team, obviously, as we move forward. So keep candidates in mind, shoot anything my way, thoughts or concerns, happy to voice them. Okay. All right, membership recruitment. Just quickly before we get to the end here, just wanted to give you a little update on where we are here. So 16 total members is what we have. We have 3 gold level sponsors and 13 standard level sponsors. That's the $5,000 range and the $2,000 range. I had waffled with the idea of increasing that for this year. It's not going to make a huge difference to our bottom line. And I think the goal of Smart Commute is not to ask for an exorbitant amount of membership money, because we're not providing big kind of events or outreach opportunities or huge networking opportunities like maybe AC Rep does. Our value is kind of on the back end and getting things like the Broomfield Flex Ride up and running for some of our members. This is something I struggled with a little bit and maybe change next year, but I kept it for the same this year. So we have 44,000 in existing memberships that we're expecting to come in 2023. $4,000 goal was my goal to bring in. So 2 new basic members. Karen kind of always kept that 2 new members goal. I've already exceeded that this year, so I'm probably going to bump that up. I've already brought in a few new people. So looking forward to maybe bringing in even more. Thanks to those of you who have connected me with the right folks. I'm actively talking with each kind of old partner or existing partner to keep those relationships moving, because a lot of those relationships were, quite frankly, Karen's relationships from a long time. And I need to make sure that I'm connected with the right person, and Smart Commute brings the value to the table that they need from their organization's perspective. I guess the call to action here at the bottom is just to continue helping me identify new members. I know all of you have done that have good synergy, not only with this group, Smart Commute, but also with NADA. I think there's value, obviously, in both of those. And for some of our members, this Smart Commute meeting doesn't make sense, but it does make a lot of sense to be at NADA. I'm looking at the big engineering firms in the room, the HDRs and folks. So I would ask for that as we continue to move into the first quarter of this year. Just wanted to give you a little bit of an update there to say we're on the right track, but I'm still pushing forward for a lot more.
Thanks,
That's it.
Carson. Any questions on that or comments, thoughts?
know
Not seeing any.
This
There
is
we
great,
go.
and yeah, I have I'll circle with you, Carson. I have some more feelers out there as well, especially on the contracting side. So yes, it's important.
Yeah, thank you. I think I just anecdotally, the contracting side and the construction side is amazing for NADA, and I think there's a lot of synergy there. And obviously, we feel strongly about NADA. I think from a Smart Commute perspective, another untapped potential for us is the sustainability space. A lot of energy there, a lot of sustainability coordinators at companies now, especially big corporations. So if you know of any efforts that are happening around that, you think might be a good fit, people that are looking for a way to reduce their carbon footprint, then I think that's also pretty good synergy for us.
Carson, have we done any work with the higher ed space in the past with like admin and faculty, teachers?
Yeah, talk about a challenging space for TDM because of all the different components that go into that. But yes, we had an existing relationship with the Regis University that was pretty good, obviously in the south end of our border. But we've since lost some contacts there, and it's been kind of hard. They have a lot of turnover, and obviously no one They have very few people on that campus, so they're all commuters. We helped them work on a G-Line plan when the G-Line opened, getting them connected to that. We also work with Front Range Community College campuses in Westminster and Longmont. I see Catherine came off camera to nod there. Those are kind of the main higher ed spaces that we deal with, but I think there's always opportunities there. And I know you probably know this better than anybody, Nathan. A lot of students take the 120X to get down to the area campus. And I'm not sure if there's kind of an origin outreach opportunity there for us with RTD to say, hey, you're a student at our area, take the bus or take the train. So I think we could get a bit more creative this year around that. Send me thoughts if you have them. Happy to hear them. That's all I have, Chair.
All right, perfect. Any other questions? We're at the other point of the agenda before we end. And if anybody had anything they wanted to comment on or share before we say goodbye for the day.
Only other quick question on my end is, do we have an update on the new fare structure and when that goes in?
Oh, I'm just going to straight kick that to Troy.
Yep.
Not really an update. I can tell you that the plan is not at the approval status to the board for another month or two. And I think the fare will be reduced in some significant manner. Probably will not go into effect until 2024. We've got to make sure we get through all the financial analysis and see where we can make up for some of the lost revenue. I think we're going to be able to do that. But yeah, it's unfortunately, Nathan, it's a kind of slow, arduous task, but the assumption's been made with staff and us on the board that it will happen, and probably will happen in the way that was recommended by most of the public outreach results. So we're really looking forward to that. But yeah, it's kind of pokey.
Well, in my perspective, you guys are doing a great job, and I think there's a lot of excitement behind it. So thank you.
Yeah, we're tickled to death with that. There would really be it probably won't be during my term, but you know, some of us like to move to no fares, but we don't quite have the financial modeling to be able to do that yet. But we may move that way within the next decade. If we can acquire a little better funding source from the state of Colorado, it would be helpful. You know, one note, most major transit agencies receive 20 to 23% of their revenues from the state where they reside. And we are fortunate if we get 1%. So we're very much reliant on sales and use tax. That's the way we were formed in 1969, and it was enhanced with the fast tracks vote to get to, you know, to 1. So, but that's hard to plan. You know, ebbs and flows with the economy. It would be nice if we had some supplemental funding. So we've got some work to do with the governor to get to that, but we're starting to break down some barriers with some thought leaders at the Capitol, including Faith Winter and a few other leaders that are very important on this matter. So that's the route we hope to see, you know, in the next decade.
Thanks for that update, Troy. Thanks for your work on all this too.
It's
a long
interesting.
process.
It's interesting.
That's a good word for it.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. Well, thanks for coming in today. Stay warm, be safe if you have to drive anywhere. Sounds like it's just going to get nasty as the day goes on. And we'll see you next month. What's the date of the next meeting? Do we know off the top of our head?
I don't remember right now. I could look at my calendar, but I did want to say that I'm going to bring an e-bike and FlexRide budget update next month. So bring your accounting hat to that one. I promised that back in January and didn't bring it this month because I wasn't ready. So let me look at my calendar. It's the 22nd.
March 22nd. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have
Okay.
2 conflicts: board meeting after AC Rep BAP. So yeah, you probably won't see me for a month or two. So no great loss. but I will try and make an appearance when I can, and when the legislature finally adjourns in May, maybe I'll be a little more regular.
I think I saw your face on a bus stop the other day.
Oh,
actually.
those turkeys, you know, they won't, they obviously haven't sold the space. So, yeah, I'm getting ready for my reelection campaign, which is kind of ironic because I can't run again. So I wish they'd take the damn things down. Let me know, Jessica, if you see any horns or mustaches drawn on those. I'll take them down myself.
Yeah, no, you're a good looking guy on the bus stop, so you're
Yeah,
good.
geez. Yeah. Spent a lot of money for those, but I didn't intend for them to go into 2023 for Pete's sake. It's embarrassing.
All right, everyone, have a good day. Thanks so much.
Yeah. Thanks
Thank you so
everybody for the
much.
input.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Great
Okay,
work.
Safe.